Okay, so hi Megan, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Two Megans.
Yeah.
Fab. So do you mind just like saying a little bit about which specialism you're on, and then we'll kind of crack into it?
Yeah. So I am in my first year doing the STP in Clinical Bioinformatics on the Genomics stream. So I'm based in the Genomics lab and I'm in Exeter.
Okay, cool. So I know very little about bioinformatics, as probably will become clear. So do you mind just like saying a little bit about your background? Did you have like a bioinformatics-y background?
Yeah, so I started off quite broad actually. So my undergrad was in biomedical sciences, which I think is where quite a lot of us came from, really. And in there, I really liked genetics. So I then went on and did a genetics master's, but it wasn't very lab based. So I started moving at that point a little bit more to computer based stuff. So looking at like exome sequencing and things like that, which was really interesting. So then from there, what I've been doing for the past 3 years is a PhD, which has been in something called genetic epidemiology, which is kind of like population genetics. So quite large scale data. So it fit actually quite well with what I thought was bioinformatics, but it's actually quite different to what bioinformaticians do in the NHS. But I think you're not the only one. I think bioinformatics is quite new in the NHS, and a lot of people aren't actually sure what we do. And to be honest, before I started, I wasn't sure what we did. So yeah, I've got quite a varied background, but honestly, to go into bioinformatics, you don't have to have a bioinformatics background at all. So we've got people at the minute who came in from nursing, just straight from like a genetics master's. So there's quite a varied background, which is good.
That's good. So is your PhD quite computer based as well then?
Yeah, so it's all completely computer based. It's all a lot of like statistical coding and Python and things like that. But it's a big thing in bioinformatics just getting used to like large scale data, because obviously it's all going to be, especially in genomics, it's going to be all exome sequencing, whole genome sequencing and things like that. So it's just trying to get used to really large scale data. So yeah.
It's quite an exciting like part of genetics at the moment, isn't it? So
yeah, it is. It's nice to be like right at the forefront of it. Like a lot of the time we're looking at new tools and new ways to make things quicker, and so yeah, it is really, really interesting.
So what would you say bioinformatics is kind of, what would you do within bioinformatics? Like what are the kind of streams?
Sorry, can you repeat?
What are the like main things that bioinformaticians do?
Okay.
That's the best way of me saying it.
Yeah, so there's 3 streams for bioinformatics. So you've got genomics, you've got health informatics, and you've got physical sciences, and they're all super different. So physical sciences, sorry to the physical sciences people out there, I don't entirely know what it is they do, but I think they're based in places like radiotherapy and places like that. So they have a lot to do with the computer systems behind that. Health informatics, I think they do a lot to do with big data, but like hospital-wide big data. And then in genomics, so we're obviously involved in analysing biological data, basically, in genetics. So what we do is a lot of like testing and implementation of the pipeline, so exome sequencing, next generation sequencing pipelines. So just as an example, like in a week, what a bioinformatician might do is they might run an exome sequencing pipeline to identify genomic variants, so as part of the diagnostic service. We might work on like validating a new bioinformatic tool that you can incorporate into these pipelines. And we also do quite a lot of like design and development of databases and things, so like to store, sequencing results in or something like that. So it's super varied. But really, I guess just like development and improvement of tools and systems, really. So it's good. It's so varied, but it means it's quite difficult to like understand what we do, I think.
There's so much data that comes out of even like one test. It must be really hard to find a way of storing all of that.
Yeah, and even more so now that data's getting bigger and bigger. So as we move to like whole genome sequencing as opposed to exome sequencing, it's so much bigger. So there's going to be a lot of moving towards like cloud storage and things like that, because there's just, yeah, it's one of the biggest problems we're having at the minute.
Are there a lot of you at your hospital or in clinical bioinformatics? Are there a lot of trainees?
Yeah, so I think again it's quite new. So I mean, across the whole of the country, I think there was about 30 in bioinformatics genomics stream. In my lab at the minute, I've got one in each year. So I've got me in first year, someone else in second, someone else in third. So that's really good.
Yeah.
That's so handy. Especially to have someone who's gone through it in COVID as well, because obviously everything's so different now. So to have someone who went through it last year, it makes it a whole lot nicer on me.
Yeah,
so I'm not the only one.
Definitely, you can ask them any questions.
Exactly. Constantly on Teams asking questions to her. What do I do?
Actually, we had a coffee morning this morning with like all the STPs in genomics at Birmingham and cancer genomics, and I just kept asking them questions like, is it normal to not really hear anything from uni? Like all this basically.
Yeah.
So what have you been up to so far then?
So again, clinical bioinformatics is a little bit different to other streams. So I think quite a lot of the other streams, you have like one big block of uni at the beginning, and then you can move on to your rotation. But for us, our uni is spread quite a lot throughout the first year, just because I think we need to have quite a lot of bases, like coding bases and things like that. So I've had so far, I think, 5 weeks of uni spread up until now. I've got another one next week and then another 2 in Feb. So it's been quite difficult to get rotations done, really. Yeah. But I finished one rotation, which worked really well with one of my modules. So that made it really easy. And I've also worked on a validation project as well. So there was a new tool that kind of popped up that we thought might be interesting. So I kind of did a little bit of reading, tested it on some, real life examples. So that was really, really good, even just to get used to like how the file systems work. That's one thing I would say to anyone listening out there. Get stuck in. Don't wait for something to fall in your lap. Just offer to do anything, even if it sounds really hard. It'll be worth it. And I'm working on now doing some Excel training for some of the other scientists. So yeah, doing a little bit of everything, really.
That sounds really interesting though. It's a bit strange that the uni isn't blocked together, to me at least. But it's able to kind of fit in things that you might not be able to otherwise if you were on rotation. Yeah,
exactly. I do think it's quite nice as well to be able to spend some time in the lab before you have to go away for so long. So I only had a couple of weeks at the beginning, and I could come back and get used to speaking to everyone, and well, virtually anyway.
Yeah. It is a bit strange at the moment. So I don't know if you did the same module that the genomics people did at uni, but we did like a clinical bioinformatics module, group work and then individual work.
Yeah.
How much, so it was like variant interpretation. How similar is that to like what you actually get up to, or is that just not bioinformatics at all?
No. No, which is really strange because it's called Introduction to Clinical Bioinformatics, but it's not what we do in the slightest. So that more is what genomics STP students do, whereas we could be involved in that tool kind of stuff, but it would more be the background of it. So like, identifying, is this tool any good to use in our variant interpretation, like pipeline, I guess, that the genomics scientists would use. So yeah, it's a little bit strange, but we're before that. So yeah, we would run the pipeline, and then it would come to genomic scientists to do that kind of stuff that we did in that module. It was a bit odd.
I guess trying to teach everyone like Python in a week, personally, that would have been a nightmare.
we had Introduction to Programming just before Christmas, and oh my gosh, it was so hard. It was Python in a week basically, and it was, yeah, it's been intense, but it's good. It is good. I'm glad they kind of just push you into it, and you're just like, go and learn Python. You've got a week. But yeah, it was good. I understand why they did it, but yeah, stress.
Throw you in at the deep end. Sink or swim.
That is STP, like in a nutshell. Thrown straight in at the deep end.
That's cool though. So did you have any Python experience beforehand, or was that introduction your first kind of experience with it?
So I've done a lot of bash scripting in my PhD, and I've done a lot of like R code, which is like statistical coding, but Python wasn't really anything that I had got too much into, especially not how much we did learn in that week. So it was a lot about writing like a whole Python script, which I had never ever done before, which is probably why it was so hard. But even with some coding background that I did have, it was still really, really tricky. Yeah, I would say if you wanted to do bioinformatics, if you don't have a coding background, just do a little bit before you start, because I can imagine it would be extremely terrifying trying to jump straight into that kind of coding. But it's definitely going to help us out in the long run, 100%. But yeah,
I think there was a Future Learn course or something on like Python programming as well, but I thought I might do before I found out the bioinformatics that we do is nothing like. Okay, I don't need to do mine more.
I don't need to worry. Yeah. There's loads online that you can do, which it would make it a whole lot easier, definitely. But yeah, I just didn't get around to it. But yeah.
So what was your application experience like?
So I found the application quite tricky. I think most of us probably did. So I just with my PhD, you get a lot of experience out of that you don't necessarily think of. So it's like even just like collaborating with other people. The STP is all about, networking with other people, getting involved with all the different labs around and that kind of stuff. So that I had a lot of that in there, and a lot of like presenting my work. So during my PhD, I went to America and presented some work over there. So I put a lot of that in there, and one of the big things as well that I put in is like innovation. So one of the questions was about being interested in science and being able to, participate in research and innovation. And obviously I did quite a lot of that, but I think it doesn't need to be science related, I guess, is one of the things I would possibly say. Like I was lucky that I could do something that was science related. But I get it, the application's so tricky. I see they've changed it this year, actually, haven't they? Which is probably very nice. It's so hard trying to squeeze everything into like 250 words.
I think my innovation bit was from like my tutoring job, so it was really not sciencey at all.
Yeah, exactly.
Trying to explain why it was useful and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think a lot of the things they want out of STP students is not really the science side of it. Like obviously you have to have that kind of background, but they just want people who can like teamwork and so it's not all about the science, which was nice.
Yeah. What was your interview like?
Really nice. So while I was doing my master's, I actually worked in the lab I'm based in now. So like before I had the interview, I was like, okay, I know the people, everything's gonna be fine, but I was so nervous. I think again, with COVID, of all the bad things, we were quite fortunate that we didn't have to do the scary STP interview. So sorry to everyone before us. But there was still, again, like, I think it just proves it's not all about the science as well. Like you do need to have that science basis. And one of the big things is like look through the curriculum, 100% look through the curriculum, because mine was all based off that. But then there was a lot of it as well. I think we had like 2 questions or 3 questions, only out of 6 that wasn't based on science. So I think mine was about privacy or something along those lines. So yeah, it was okay. It was okay. I was glad it was that, but yeah, not the thing that I was most nervous about, to be honest, out of everything that we did in the application process. So
my worst thing was the aptitude test.
Exactly.
It seemed ridiculous that like the thing you were most worried about was the first stage rather than like the interview. Although if it had been an assessment centre, I'd have been very worried, but it was fine in the end. What have you got planned for like the rest of this year? Have you got any rotations that you're able to do around uni?
Yeah, so I've done one so far. I've done the clinical bioinformatics one that we did at uni. So I've finished that one. I've got a couple that are going to be a little bit of a struggle with COVID. So there's one that I need to do that's physical sciences based. So going and testing and looking at the equipment that's used in other parts of the hospital. So that's going to be really tricky. But I think we're going to try and arrange something literally just like online, just have like an afternoon watching someone do stuff like over Teams or something. So I need to try and arrange that. But that would be really good to be able to do that, because I think last year it wasn't able to be done. So I think we're just all having to be super creative with our rotations now. And I've got a couple more that I can just do based around my uni stuff, which will be really helpful. So I've got a programming assignment that I'm doing at the minute that I can just transfer straight over to competencies, which will be so helpful. Yeah, super helpful. And then otherwise I'm just trying to get some professional practice ones done before we go into 2nd and 3rd year, where we're going to have a lot more crazy competencies to do. So yeah,
I find those ones so hard to do. Like I don't feel like I have the evidence to go for any of them yet, but I don't want to leave them all until like 2nd and 3rd year.
It feels like any evidence we do have as well is just not enough. Like that we need like 3 or 4 bits, and I'm like, I'm never gonna get this. But yeah,
we will see. I'm sure it'll be fine in the end. All the other STPs like in 2nd and 3rd year as well kind of say, because we do journal clubs, they say when they're gonna try and do something for a competency. So I'm trying to work out what they're doing, like, is this a presentation, is this a quiz?
Yeah. We're really lucky in the Southwest. We've got a really good group of people who have like organised like clinical coding events and all these kind of things. So that's going to be so helpful to get some of those done, just to get involved with those. So that's going to be really good. But I think a lot of the competencies that we have to do in 2nd and 3rd year for the actual rotations are done just by doing clinical work, really. So in bioinformatics, we start clinical work quite early. So I'll probably be trained towards the end of this year to start clinical work. But then it means a lot of it isn't kind of too far out of what I have to do day to day anyway, which will be really good.
That's so nice.
A good change from this year.
Yeah, definitely. How have you found it so far? It's been obviously quite strange, but just generally, how have you found it?
Generally super hard. So I would say I felt like I had mentally prepared myself that the STP would be really challenging, but it has like surpassed that. And I don't mean to scare anyone, but like especially with what we've had to do in bioinformatics, where you've had to spread uni, you know, across however many months, you always end up having a deadline right before another uni module. Which makes it really hard to like juggle everything. But like that's just the uni side of it, I guess. Like the work side of it's been great. It's so interesting, and being able to get like stuck straight in and doing any validation work or any training or anything has been really good. Yeah, it's been super hard in COVID, like just trying to find time to speak to people, I guess, because obviously when you're in the office you can just turn around and, you know, say hi and ask them a silly question, but it's not as easy as that at the minute. But I think hopefully it'll start getting better soon, and we can start getting back in and speaking to real life people. But yeah, it's been amazing. I couldn't Definitely recommend.
It's nice that your work stuff has been a little less stressful if uni has been balls to the wall. Like, it's nice that you've had a little bit of, like, half of your stuff to be a little bit less stressful.
Yeah.
Are all of your assignments like coursework, or are they any exams?
Yeah, so we haven't actually had any exams yet. Obviously the professional practice and healthcare science one has an exam, but I don't think any of my other ones have exams this year. It's a lot of what it is very similar to what we did originally. So you do like presentation, group work throughout the week, and then present it at the end, and then you get a grade on that. And then afterwards you have an essay. So it's been the same basically for all the other modules that I've done.
I found that quite useful because you can kind of integrate any feedback into your own one, especially because I didn't have much experience at all. It was nice to see like where we'd done something right and where we hadn't. So that was good.
Yeah, that is always helpful. And a good thing with the coursework and stuff as well, instead of like an exam, is that you might be able to bring it into your work competencies, which I found super useful with the clinical bioinformatics one. I think for what we do, doing coursework is so much more helpful than doing an exam. So I'm quite thankful that we haven't had any exams yet. The coursework's all actually it's been quite good. There's just a lot of it, that's all it is. And I think because we've got 2 extra modules in our first year compared to everyone else, so we actually do 7 modules in our first year. So that's the only reason why it's been so crazy stressful. But they are doing a curriculum review, so maybe that'll be better for the next years.
Yeah, it is crazy. I remember one of the third year bioinformatics STP is giving us a little presentation saying how many modules you have, and I'm just so grateful that we don't, because it would have been such a shock.
Yeah, I think at least with life sciences, guys, you have to learn so much different. Like, it's such a broad area of stuff you have to learn. Whereas I feel like for us it's a little bit more. It's all very similar. So we've had one programming module. We've got another one in a couple of weeks' time, and so they all like relate really well, which I think makes it a little bit easier. If I was jumping from like one thing to something completely different, I think it would be so tricky. But at least, with what we've done in the programming, we can use it all on the next module, so it does make it a little bit easier. But yeah, it's just the sheer amount of it makes it crazy. But
have you had much contact with other first year trainees from other places?
Yeah, so we've got a really nice cohort actually of all bioinformatics trainees across the whole of the country. We've got a WhatsApp group, and we've got a Slack, which is what bioinformaticians use, which I have never heard of before. But it's just like an online chat thing, which is amazing. We've got a really good group of people, and it would be so hard to do it without them. So definitely speak to as many people as possible. Sorry.
Especially now everything's so virtual, it's nice to just have a bit of a support network.
Definitely, 100%. You definitely need it, because the STP isn't like anything else either. I feel like it's so different to like other graduate programs. So to be able to have someone else to be like, is this normal? Like, is this what we're meant to be doing? Is so helpful. It's really nice. Yeah.
So are you working from home all the time now?
Yeah, so before the November lockdown, I was able to go in 1 day a week and work in the lab, which was really nice. But then with the November lockdown, I'm completely working from home now, which is a bit of a shame, but also like I appreciate it. And obviously being in the genomics lab, we've got a lot of lab staff who are required to be there, and I'm not getting it. I don't want to get in the way, so I'm very happy to work from home. But yeah, hopefully I'll be able to go back in 1 day a week soon. We'll see.
That would be nice, just to see. I want to go in just to remind people what I look like. I'm still here.
Yeah. No, it's so hard when you've only just started. I feel like people must forget like who we are. They'll just see a face pop up on Teams. Like, who is that?
Definitely. Fab. Do you have any other like particular advice for anyone thinking about applying, either general or just for your specific stream?
General, I would say do it. I think don't let the application like scare you off, because it does look super scary. I know they've changed it this year and I don't know exactly what it looks like, but it looks really scary, and it looks like you need to have all this amazing experience, which if you don't have it, that's okay. Especially with like the such broad range of people you have on the STP. So like I said with bioinformatics, like just because I've done a PhD, like there's a lot of people who haven't. As someone who's come from nursing, and he didn't have any bioinformatics experience at all before. So just don't compare yourself to other people. And that is the same on the STP as well, because everyone does things like so differently. Each lab do things so differently. So just because someone in one lab has done 100 competencies already and you've only done 2, like that's okay. Because everyone's so different. For clinical bioinformatics, I would say if you don't have any coding background, try and do a little bit before you start, if obviously if you're going to get a place, because it would be really scary, I would think, to try and go in with nothing. And I would say a big thing with bioinformatics as well is, like, as I said earlier, it's really hard to know like what they do. So if you can speak to someone or watch this lovely YouTube video to find out like what they do, definitely do it, because it is hard to find online. It's so hard. And yeah, apply.
Thank you so much. This has been so helpful even for me, because I feel like I should probably definitely know it, and I didn't. But yeah, thank you so much for being a part of this, and I hope you have a lovely rest of your day and that uni calms down a little bit.
Thank you. It was lovely to meet you as well.
You too.